Hey there, so welcome back. We are now starting with the adoption from this book, which is what most of this is about, although foster care has been mentioned, obviously. So we're going to be covering how many and who's counting in the adoption industry, and we are starting with the quote from Ruth Peterson: "Adoption is a form of domestic terrorism." First, it is necessary to define adoptee. While it is a misnomer to refer to any adult adopted person as an adopted child has unfortunately been defined in law. Any person, whether an adult or a minor, who is legally adopted as the child of another in a court proceeding. It is essential to determine whether articles and surveys about adopted children actually pertain to children under legal age, or whether they are referring to adopted adults, or to adoptees of all ages. Now, this source is by Nolo Law in Nolo's Plain English Dictionary, which you can find online, nolo.com, dictionary. /dictionary. For adoption data, the federal government has relied on the National Council for Adoption, NCFA, formerly the National Committee for Adoption, a 1,200-member organization of Christian adoption agencies that lobby to increase adoptions, and also to keep adoption records sealed. Many are Mormons, and 11 are affiliated with the Gladney Center in Texas, formerly Gladney Chain of Maternity Homes, to coerce relinquishment by unwed mothers. NCFA has tended to minimize their estimate as to the number of adoptees, particularly when attempting to advance the false notion that not many adoptees care to search for information about their origin and or find and meet their biological families. According to university researchers, hold on a second. Oh boy, there are 5 to 7 million adoptees in the United States, and that is by Elizabeth Donalds, a clinical psychologist who wrote Voices of Adoptees, Stories and Experiences Within Schools, which was a dissertation to the Antioch University, New England, and it was cited in 2012 in the foreword. According to the last 2020 national census, are out of 330.01 million people in the United States, about 2 million were categorized as adopted children, higher than the agencies reported. Again, you can find that on census.gov. So here's how it reads. Here's the table. You guys can check out the table. You can look up census.gov for the census, and or get the book because it's on page 31. Relationship: the total house population is 758.215 million people, and under 18, 71 million of those. Household 115 million. Spouse 56 million. Biological son or daughter 82 million. Adopted son or daughter 2 million. Total 2 million, and under 18 is 1.6 million. Stepson or stepdaughter is 4 million, and brother or sister is 3 million. Yeah. Isn't that lovely? Alright. So it does continue to, there's a big table, so you guys can find it. I'm not going to read it all. It's unrelated, but you guys get the point. 10 years earlier, with the 2000 census results, the results released in 2003, was the first census to estimate the number of adopted children, but the information was compiled as follows. 28.4 million total in the population, with 2.1 million categorized as adopted children, 4.4 million categorized as stepchildren, 8% were adopted out of 84 million with householders with children, 2.5 of all children under the age of 18 were adopted children, 2.5 of all people over the age of 18 were adopted children, and 1 out of 6 households had adopted children. Again, you can find that on the census.gov. Both the 2000 and the 2010 censuses contain the following disclaimer. The adoption category includes various types of adoption, such as adoption of biological related and unrelated children, adoption of stepchildren, adoption through public and private agencies, domestic and international adoptions, and independent and informal adoptions. And people may have different understandings of an adopted or step-parent-child relationship. So the census cannot actually distinguish children who are adopted by their step-parents, children adopted by their biological grandparents or other relatives, and children adopted by other people to whom they are not biologically related. Modern approaches, despite taking into the account of problems over-counter and under-counter, and the coherence of the census enumerates the other official data, cannot measure the total United States population, let alone its adopted population, with complete accuracy. Even if every single household in every remote corner of the country was counted, an important aspect of the census process is to evaluate the quality of the data. The census estimates as to number of adopted children are skewed for 4 reasons. Information for the census is collected in 2 ways: by questionnaire mailed to every available home address and via confidentiality-bound census workers who travel door to door. I almost did that before COVID. Some reasons that adopters and adoptees may not provide true or complete information to census workers, strangers, or on the census forms include immigration and citizenship concerns, reluctance to share any personal information with the government, reluctance to share information about adoptive status, misunderstanding the category of adopted children, a term frequently misused to categorize the adopted adults. The adopted child is the biological child of one of the spouses or partners. Because sealing of adoptees' birth records gave adopters the option of not telling the child, many never told, and many late discovery adult adoptees didn't find out they were adopted until late in life. Some in their 80s, so adopters who never told would be unlikely to tell a census taker at the door, especially within earshot of the adopted child or adult, in the relationship to the householder. Column of the census summary, the respondent speaking in behalf of others in the household, many be categorized as other relative, roomer or boarder, housemate or roommate, unmarried partner, other non-relative, and that's a total of 229 million individuals who may not be privy to the adoptive status of one or more of the children and adults in the household. The census probably did not count the informally adopted or common law adoptees. Informal adoption was once thought to be common practice only in Black America and is legal, but is more widespread among all races, along with more recently discovered illegal underground cases of rehoming adoptees. Oh man, the rehoming part pisses me off. That's a whole other thing, but if you guys are on TikTok, follow Carpuzzi. She talks all about this. Anyway, according to other survey methods and sources, most new statistical information about adoption-related areas is being gathered and analyzed by private organizations through private surveys and research. Such organizations include Allen Guttmacher Institute, Child Trends HSA, formerly APWA, and the Child Welfare Research Center at the University of California, Berkeley. Some information provided through the analysis of extensive governmental sources not focused on adoption, such as National Survey of Family Growth of the National Survey of Families and Households and the National Health Interview Survey. These surveys, when viewed through the lens of adoption, give current statistical information on areas such as pregnancy and infertility rates, numbers of families adopting or considering adopting, and profiles of adoptive families that still don't tell us the total number of adoptees in the U.S., and that's according to the Child Welfare Information Gateway. Federal and state agencies. National Center for Social Statistics, NCSS, from 1957 through 1975, the federally funded NCSS published some figures when the states voluntarily reported on all finalized adoptions, yet did not actually account for all the adoptions that there was no organized ongoing effort to do so. U.S. Department of Bureau of Statistics on Intercounty Adoptions state that every year 600,000 to 800,000 people are trafficked across international borders. 70% or more are female, 50% are children. The asterisk in this, when it says international borders, it is unknown how many, for instance, 15,000 children detained and migrant children at one count who crossed the southern border unaccompanied ended up in adoption, nor how many who were previously forcibly separated from parents who were deported back to their countries of origin may have been adopted as legally abandoned. According to other survey methods and sources, most new statistical information about adoption and related areas. Wait, I feel like I read this. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we read that. Okay. Sorry. We read this, and I lost where I left off. Here we go. Department of Health and Human Services, DHHS. In 1986, Congress passed a law mandating a national data collection system for foster care and adoption. It included a 5-year timetable of steps in the process to ensure federal regulations would be in place. By December 31st, 1989, at this time, there weren't even uniform laws requiring collection of pre-adoption family medical information for the unknown number of children surrendered to strangers. In 1988, Congress passed the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act and the National Adoption Information Clearinghouse, NAIC, now known as the Child Welfare Information Gateway, as established by DHHS, Administration for Children and Families, which reported 1.5 million to 2 million adopted children in America and anywhere from 6 to 10 million adult adoptees. And that's the source is NAIC. This was the triple number that specialists had estimated a few years prior. Yet, that estimate still did not tell us how many more adoptees how many more adopted over past 8 decades of sealed adoptions. Regulations for the data collection system was not published until September 27, 1990. Okay. And were able to implement to be fully implemented by October 1st, 1991. But on October 9, 1991, DHHS Commissioner Wade Horn issued a memo delaying implementation indefinitely and delaying publication of regulations until August 1992. Despite an annual foster care budget of over $2 billion, neither was its first December 1998 met for implementation while adoptees remained invisible. Foster care records from 1980 to 1995, the American Public Human Services Association, ASPHA, formerly the American Public Welfare Association, APWA, collected information on the foster care system through Voluntary Cooperative Information System, VCIS. Data submitted on a still voluntary basis was complete and inconsistent. While foster children were easily discarded and lost in the system. Court records and vital statistics, other government data collection. In 1995, with the dissolution of the federally funded National Center for Social Statistics, NCSS, Victor and Carol Flango at the National Center of State Courts to Williamsburg, Virginia, conducted a review of court records. Bureau of Vital Statistics and Social Services agencies, with funds from the Children's Bureau Adoption Information Improvement Project. It was said to have served as the best recent complete picture of adoption in the United States, and they told us that states with greater populations has the highest number of adoptions, but not total number of adoptees in the United States. And that's according to how many were adopted in 1992. Flango, this was published in 1995. Since 1980, the American Public Human Services Association, APHSA, formerly American Public Welfare Association, APWA, has collected information on the foster care system through the Voluntary Cooperative Information System, VCIS. While this ever-discontinuing data is submitted by states on a voluntary basis, leading to incomplete information under inconsistent data definitions. The Foster Care of Children Adoption, a journal published by the Center of the Future of Children, Adoption of the Packard Foundation in Los Altos, California, focused its spring 1993 issue on adoption. An article by Kathy Stoley, Statistics on Adoptions in the United States, provides an overview of the background and future of adoption data. With the passage of the Adoption and Safe Families Act, ASFA, of 1997, there were renewed efforts to improve data available about adoption under the Adoption and Foster Care Analysis and Reporting System, AFCRAS. States are required to collect case-specific data on all children in foster care for whom the state child welfare agency the responsibility for placement, care, or supervision, regardless of eligibility for Social Security, Title 4E. Further, states are required to collect data on all adopted children who were placed by the state child welfare agency or by private agencies under contract with the public child welfare agency. States are encouraged to report other adoptions that are finalized in the state, but these are still on a voluntary reporting basis. This is according to Children's Bureau Administration for Children and Families. State agencies, including voluntary state reporting agencies. In 1992, Children's Home Society, CHS, in Los Angeles County, which placed its first child in 1891, voluntarily reported that this one agency had facilitated 40,000 adoptions in the first half of the century. That's according to Bob Poole, in the article Mystery Baby, published in 1992. There are now 3,000 public and private adoption agencies nationwide. Hypothetically, if all 3,000 agencies facilitated even half as many adoptions for the same period as Children's Home Society, there would be over 64 million adoptees, both living and dead. Pollsters following are the more common probability sampling methods: single random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, multi-stage sampling, multi-phase sampling. There is no standard magic number for obtaining a random sampling. Survey samplings about adoptees have cited as few as 100 to as many as tens of thousands. A random sampling includes the selection method of the elements of the population sampling method to be used, sample size, reliability, degree of the conclusions that we can obtain. This is an estimation of the error that are going to have in terms of probability. A 95% confidence limit tells that if you repeat the same experiment 100 times, your estimate will fall into the representative interval 95 times. The p-value is about how likely your sample is to come from a population where whatever it is you are does not exist. So if you get p-value of less than 0.05, it tells you that there's less than 5 chances out of 100 that your sample came from a population that weren't true. In a 1997 benchmark survey was conducted by Evan B. Donaldson Institute using a random sample of 26,700 respondents in a social community survey designed by Harvard University when the estimated U.S. population was at 366,490,000, of which 7.1 million were children under 18, 6.4 million of whom lived with a never married mother. And that's according to the 1997 U.S. Census, resulting in its benchmark findings of 58% of Americans who have never been touched by adoption. In arriving at 58% figure, benchmark asks these questions by phone. Do you know an adoptee? Have you adopted a child? Have you relinquished a child for adoption? To include know an adoptee once again skews the statistic even for estimating those touched by adoption, which may apply an entirely different meaning by the respondent who simply knows an adoptee, or whose perception of adoptee versus stepchild and adopted child versus adopted adult is different from the benchmark intended. And this is according to the Harris Interactive polls. Harris Interactive, a market research firm, has periodically conducted a survey sponsored by Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption called National Foster Care Adoption Attitudes. Prior to 2002, the surveys were done by phone. Since 2002, the Harris poll has been conducted online, and the stated purpose of the survey has been to understand why Americans do or do not adoptee from foster care, and to learn what are the barriers to adopting from foster care, and to learn who can or should be an adoptive parent, and to provide the research to child advocates, adoption professionals and practitioners, policy makers, and the media. 53% of Americans are touched by adoption. and this was according to the source, which surveyed 16,000 adults 18 and over in 2007. Similar to the benchmark survey methodology, but from a much smaller sampling, the Harris poll individuals included the poll included individuals who were adopted, did adopt, have a family, or friends who were adopted, and in 2013 a Harris poll additionally asked reasons why individuals wanted to adopt, and found the reasons selected were 48% did want to care and nurture a child, and 11% admitted to having fertility issues, and only 4% indicated they like or love children. Wow. Okay. Media viewer polls, Adoption Media LLC, Roper and Gallup polls. Media has been constantly testing their ratings by polling on various current topics to see how many are reading or watching, but generally stay away from the adoption topics, and have never been interested in how many readers or viewers are adopted. However, in 1997, Nathan Gwilliam and his father Dale Gwilliam co-founded Adoption Media LLC, focused on soliciting prospective adopters for foster care and orphans via online photos listings, aka the baby catalogs. This is according to Roper Center polls. While interested in opinions and statistics on abortion, Roper has generally been disinterested in adoptees. But in 1996, in the Washington Post, Roper published results on a August poll and a September poll on interracial adoption. In the telling survey of 1,019 individuals, most respondents felt it was okay for white couples to adopt black babies, but it's not okay for black babies to adopt white babies. Gallup similarly focuses on the hot topic of the day: genealogists versus Mormon Family History Center and Ancestry.com. Half the U.S. population will have bogus ancestry in 4 generations due to falsified adoption birth records. And that's according to attorney Bryce M. Clagett in Death of Genealogy and Adoption Laws Threaten Genealogy of the New England Genealogical Society newsletter in 1990. The Mormon Family Center is headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah, with branches around the world. Ancestry.com, which is majority owned since 2012 by Permira, a European equity firm, was founded in 1983 and digitalized billions of family records online since 1996 from 40 countries and going back to the 1300s. Now expanded to reach mobile and social media, Ancestry.com servers handle 40 million family tree searches daily. Since digitalizing those records available online, one might think the Mormons, above all others, would be in the ideal position to count adoption. There's just one problem: compliance with the Utah state law requiring sealing of adoptees' original birth certificate. Even the Mormon issue an amended falsified birth certificate substituting the adopters' names as the parents from date of birth. Registering one's DNA profile online has been one way that adoptees have found their biological families, but who will exhume and test DNA deceased adoptees from the past 8 generations of sealed adoptions? This is according to Tim Sullivan, CEO for Ancestry.com. The National Council for NCFA website Adoption Fact Book page was described on Internet's Alta Vista search engine as covering a broad array of statistics and half-truths. NCFA's poster child for successful adoptee was President Gerald R. Ford. Despite the fact Ford was raised by his biological mother and always knew his biological father which is not typical for adoptees of traditional sealed adoptions. This was a step-parent adoption, and he did not represent the typical adoptee experience. Nevertheless, NCFA was awarded a $6 million federal grant and continued its deceptions. In 1998, the Justice Department was unhappy with New Hampshire University researcher Gerald Hotling's findings in his 30-page condensed executive summary report on missing children in 1990. His report had revealed a high incidence of family abductions and kids disappearing from institutional care. Hoteling was supposed to work another year under contract to the Justice Department, but his project funds were cut off. I wonder why. Maybe because they're behind it. When mothers of the missing got too high ending analysis, he said the official records kept on adoptions were so inefficient that even though there was a basis on methodologies, well, I cannot speak today, he was finding ranges that worked out to be 4, 5, 6, and 10 times as high. Okay. No mother goes into a delivery room and delivers an orphan. This is quoted by Divina Concetti Italiano in Lost Generations. Who's relinquishing? Unlike the 1950s to 1980s, typical relinquishing mother who was in her teens or early 20s and unwed since the 1990s. 60% of surrendered infants were from married couples in poverty who had 3 to 6 children. The greatest change of demographics in adoption was in foster care adoptions. In 1999 and today, 80% of California adoptions are private agency attorney facilitated adoptions of foreign children. 80% of public agency adoptions in California were foster children. That's according to Evan B. Donaldson Institute Symposium on Ethics and Adoption. There's a wall between those who can adopt babies and those who cannot. It is built of money. That is by Adam Pertman, Boston Globe staff writer, author of Adoption Nation and an adopter. Who's adopting? In a report titled Living Arrangements of Children, Fall 1996, written by Jason Fields and released in 2001, the U.S. Census Bureau stated that the number of adopted children in the U.S. rose from 1.1 million in 1991 to over 1.5 million in 1996. However, the Census Bureau is quick to point out that this number might not truly reflect the number of adopted children. So many adopters may not want to reveal adoptive status of children in the household to census takers. There have been a steady increase in single gay parenting through adoption. Yet most relinquishing parents are not told that their children may not be placed in the system preferred two-parent home. And organized groups of single and gay persons successfully assert that they believe is their right or entitlement to adopt. Yep. People think they're entitled to a baby when they're not. And it's gross, because nobody is. Unless they're biologically yours. And as long as you are doing what you're supposed to, you should keep your child. Don't abuse them, keep them. You know? And then not saying you should, but even if it's a case where it's necessary, there's always kinship guardianship first and then legal guardianship last, which doesn't negate the trauma, but doesn't erase the child's identity either.